Hi, good morning, everybody. Well, first of all, I think you'll be interested to know, why are we talking about drones when this is a cyber conference, and what's that short bloke doing at the front of the room? I am actually standing up, don't worry. So for the second time this morning, you're going to have a retired military officer speaking at you. Hopefully, this will be a little bit of a dialogue rather than a monologue. But we found that there's a few things here that there's a lot of crossover between the cyber world and the countering drones world. I'm not going to talk about Gatwick. We can have a chat about that over coffee if you'd like afterwards. I'm quite happy to express an opinion or two. I'm not connected to the police force or the security services dealing with that incident, so opinions are fine. Got to have a bit of who am I. I'm not a pilot, so I won't tell you all about me. However, I was in the Air Force for 23 years. I've been now 9 years in the industry, and I'm a co-owner of Level 7 Expertise. We're a small SME based in East Northamptonshire with a small number of associates. We're really a micro business, but with some fairly niche offerings. We work primarily for the MOD and for other government departments. I've been involved in all of the MOD's drone programs, but also more recently I ran an insider threat program for the MOD, and I've also been doing some cyber analysis in various projects and programs. That's the thing I fly, the DJI Mavic Pro, but I've flown the Predator, which is bottom left. That's me in Afghanistan with the Reaper. That's me with a Scan Eagle, and that's also another Scan Eagle on HMS Somerset. So lots and lots of, hopefully, relevance. What we found, as I said, is this crossover between looking at the actors that are involved in bad drone actions. So again, thinking about Gatwick. When we did the analysis with our academic partners, it was evident that a lot of the human behaviours witnessed in cyber bad actors are much the same as those in the drone world. However, there's also some leakage between the two domains, and we'll talk about that. So why are we here? Drones are pretty disruptive, increasing proliferation. I've got a slide to give you some numbers, at least from the States, and a rapid reduction in the skills required to operate. So if you want to go and buy a radio-controlled plane, and you've never flown one before, in all likelihood, you're going to crash it within 30 seconds of trying to launch. With a drone, that's not the case. And my kids quite happily can fly my drone just by looking at the iPad and saying, oh yeah, I understand what to do here, press the button, it takes off. It's very, very easy. Drone technology is cheap, and it's advancing more quickly than any of the counter-drone capabilities. A lot of the counter-drone stuff is coming from the military and being repurposed, but you can go and buy a very, very advanced drone for less than £1,000 to defend an installation with a complex counter-drone system. You're running into tens of millions of pounds. So there is a massive delta in stopping one whilst allowing the other. And of course, increasingly connected to the internet. So again, with my Mavic, I can go to Facebook Live and transmit whatever I like live, either on a private stream or publicly, which of course raises all sorts of privacy and security concerns. And what we're trying to do with a bunch of partners is to look at facilitating the positive use of drones, but stopping or reducing the threat from those with a nefarious intent. And we've done some work with our academic partners in understanding what those groups might look like. Bottom line, we're going to see more drones. They're going to be everywhere. You may not see air taxis very soon. You may not see Amazon or pizza delivery by drone, although those are the things you tend to see if you watch LinkedIn or YouTube. However, there are going to be lots of drones around for all sorts of purposes, and some of those will be bad. How many out there? Well, this is from the FAA, so the Federal Aviation Authority in the United States. In 2019, you can see the total fleets of drones, 352,000, and those are new purchases that year. High-end drones, those are the things that big commercial, $10,000, carry complex cameras. The low-end stuff is something you can go and buy from Amazon or Maplin's as was. And of course, the projected figure for next year is 500,000. We're not clear yet on what a drone lifespan is. So my Mavic is about a year old, still works perfectly well, but of course already there is a new addition, there's a zoom and there's an enterprise capability, and more, better, faster, like the iPhone. And that's going to continue. So what happens with the old drones? Do they get repurposed? But this is only the USA, and there are some peaks of activity around the world. Middle East is quite low in terms of take-up, and that's really because of the security posture by various nations. The Far East very high, Europe very high, and the United States incredibly high. And the trend, as you can see, is an increasing rate of purchase. So the numbers are just going to get very large. So I thought on the train on the way down, they were panicking that my slides weren't ready, but this is what I was thinking about on the train. Why might we want to disrupt or defeat? And we'll talk about the cyber effects and why that's hard. And then just to reflect on a couple of the basic components and then where we might see a vulnerability. So why do we want to stop a drone? Firstly, anything that might be illegal, anything that might be unsafe, or anything that's unwanted. So if it's illegal, i.e. flying over a prison, it might be unsafe, flying your drone over the heads of 80,000 people at Wembley, or if it's unwanted, you're filming somebody in their back garden. Young kid buys it, or his dad buys him a drone, and it's about £100, and he just takes it to the park and goes and flies it. He doesn't know he's doing anything wrong. It's not a sophisticated drone, so there's no geofencing. There are no software controls to stop him flying into the approach zone of Gatwick, for example. And he doesn't know he's doing anything wrong. He's just in the wrong place. So who's to tell that that could easily be unsafe, put it that way. This is an interesting one from the United States. Clearly a guy that was trying to push the boundaries as far as possible. That's a DJI Mavic. The interesting thing here, this number, that's 32,000 feet from the controller, so just over 6 statute miles. In the UK and also in the US, you are supposed to operate line of sight only. I don't believe he could see that at 6 miles. It's about this big. Pretty difficult to see. And that's the sort of disruptor, So we've said, there's the uninformed hobbyist was the first picture. This is a disruptor, and we're starting to see those same groups as you see within the cyber world. And maybe it's a human function. This is a protest. Has anybody seen this picture, by the way? What I should have said is, does anyone own a drone other than me? Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. Good. Shoot me if I get something wrong. Put your hand up. So this was a French nuclear power station. It's the same one that they flew a drone, Greenpeace flew a drone into the side of this power station before Christmas, and the drone was dressed up to look like Superman. This is now 2 drones, one drone filming another. That octocopter has just dropped a smoke bomb on the roof of the power station, and it's a nuclear power station. The message is clearly nuclear power unsafe. Look how easy it is to get in. And it's very hard to stop. This went out live, it was on YouTube, it's very easy to find. Classic, this is actually on the southern border of the United States. This is use of drones to bring drugs over the border. We have exactly the same problem in our prisons in the UK, so flying a drone to deliver an underslung payload of contraband, phones, drugs, money, weapons and so on. Very easy to do, very hard to stop. The only place that has any kind of defence against this in the UK is in Guernsey, because they changed their legislation to allow jamming. And we'll talk more about jamming later on. And then this might or might not be criminal. That's a racecourse. That's a drone hovering off the racecourse perimeter and filming the racing. What you might not know is that the live feeds that you see on the TV, like Sky, Channel 4, whatever, that's about 10 seconds behind actual live. If you've got a betting app and you can see the race live through your drone, you can get into a bet faster than the TV streams are portraying it. So you're effectively inside the betting loop. We don't know whether this is illegal or not. There's some thinking going on about what to do about this. But the racecourses and the betting agencies are clearly very unhappy. And then you might have seen this one. This was the University of Dayton Research Institute that fired a Phantom II drone into the wing of an aeroplane. Now, there are some things about this. That was a wing of a very small aircraft, and they portrayed it to be a 737, or they referenced it against a 737. But it's a chunky piece of kit. The battery is very dense, and it was fired into the wing at 238 miles an hour, which is an approach speed of the 737 plus the maximum speed of the drone. So clearly there's the opportunity for serious damage. But in effect, it's like a bird. It's about the same weight as a large bird. If a 737 hits a bird, it can be damaging. If a bird goes in the engine, clearly you're going to lose the engine. It's the same problem. However, these things get flown into places they shouldn't be. So what we tried to do is to look at the operators, not only look at the technology, which is an area that most people, or an issue that affects a lot of people, and the trap that people fall into is to look at the tech. However, the drone is a tool that's operated by a person, and very much as the previous briefer gave you, the fact that threats come from people, the vector is the tool. Well, in this case, the drone is the tool that's presenting the vector that the person wants to affect. So the things that we like about drones, lots of good legal operators, professional operators that provide drone services and survey and inspection and visibility of places you just can't get to, the dull, dirty, dangerous jobs that drones are good at. The informed hobbyist with non-commercial equipment, so the guy that goes out there and builds his own. There are quite a few of those, and the early drones were mostly like that. And it's only recently, over the last couple of years, that this high volume commercialization, and particularly from China, that's where we've seen the explosion of numbers. And then the conformist hobby pilot, like me. Next week I'm doing training and I'll become a conformist professional pilot, but we'll see. And that assumes that they're all behaving in the way that they should. So in accordance with the drone code or in accordance with their professional flying commercial operations, permission for commercial operations approval. The bad guys. We looked at a couple of those pictures before, but firstly, the uninformed hobbyist, the guy that doesn't know he's doing anything wrong, is flying in the wrong place, gets in the way. The disruptive enthusiast, he wants the cool shot. He wants internet kudos, he wants notoriety, he wants to put something on YouTube that everybody loves. And you'll see a lot of those, like the guy flying at 6 miles, the guy flying loops around a roller coaster that's in motion without the permission of the roller coaster operators and the theme park operators, and it's the cool shot. Again, sounds a bit like cyber, right? Protesters, well, we looked at the French nuclear power station, but these guys might want to be arrested. These might actually be interested in making a bigger splash. So the use of drones, particularly around, I've got a battery warning on here, by the way. The use of drones, particularly around things like fox hunting and so on, that's becoming more prevalent. And drones and counter-drones around fox hunting, that's interesting. Criminals we talked about, but not only drugs, not only prisons, there are other ways, but criminals are mostly focused on the money. So how do they use this tool to get more money? And then terrorists. There's a well of feeling that says Gatwick was all about a terrorist event. However, it didn't really fit any of the fingerprint modus operandi that I'm aware of. So there's some, there's clearly a lot of possibility of using an airborne device when we have little in the way of defense for a terrorist act. And then other hostile foreign actors such as foreign intelligence services, nation states, and so on. Anybody that is interested in disrupting our position as a nation or the nations that you represent. And this is largely based on the work done by our colleagues in Birmingham, and they're also testing some of our other further hypotheses on how you might deter some of these people. Aha, that's all right. Perfect, thanks. Why is it hard? Around Gatwick, you probably saw something in the news. Lots of people saying, well, why don't we just get the army and shoot it down? How do you know where it is in the first place? If you've ever tried shooting at a moving target, it's not very easy, particularly if it's in the dark and it's a small target a long way away. Even an army sniper is going to have trouble with that. The other issue is you start shooting at stuff, where are those rounds going to go? And as much as you might not like Crawley, shooting at Crawley from Gatwick is probably not a great idea. Might do some improvements, perhaps. Sorry to the denizens of Crawley. But it's difficult to detect. So they're very, very hard target. They are very low radar cross-section, so they don't show up well on radar. There isn't much metal apart from the battery. The rotors are generally plastic or GRP, so they don't present a lot of return to the radar. Despite the fact they sound quite unique, they don't present a very noisy signature, so it's not like a petrol engine. They're not very hot. They don't present a high thermal signature, and discriminating them against the sky is hard. Their transmitters are not very powerful by comparison, so they're difficult to detect. And also, so for example, the DJI Oculus system that is the data link between the ground controller and the air vehicle has built-in spread spectrum and frequency agility techniques. So it picks channels that are not in use as a matter of keeping its control systems proof from interference and getting a robust video signal down from the aircraft. And it does that very cleverly. It does it on the fly almost. So if you try and jam it, it will just try and pick another channel. So they're naturally defensively postured. It makes it tricky. But also they behave like birds. They'll pop up, they'll fly, they'll stop. And although birds don't often hover in the UK, but from a radar's perspective, a small drone just appears like a bird. And most air traffic radars are designed to drop the bird out of the picture so that the air traffic operator is only looking at aircraft. And figuring out what it's doing is really difficult. So how do you discern whether that drone is coming towards you with a nefarious intent? Is it just trying to take pictures? Does it have a payload? Is there a grenade on it? What is it? And what about our own position is sensitive? Is it flying straight towards our sensitive points? You know, is it a big fuel installation? Or is it just wandering around taking pictures? The DJI Mavic takes about 1 minute and 40 seconds from popping up 1 kilometre away. By the time it's over your head, 1 minute and 40 seconds, roughly, which gives you very little time to react. We'll talk more about how to stop them in a moment. And the operators can be mobile. They can be very transient. You can be in a car, you can be in a van, you could be in a block of flats. Again, looking at our police colleagues that were poking around in hedgerows during the Gatwick incident suggested that they didn't have a very clear idea of where the drone operators might be, that sort of early assessment and understanding where the threat vector might appear from. You know, a drone operator is not going to be sitting in a hedgerow. None of those user groups sit in hedgerows. And the point of origin could be really close by. It doesn't have to start a kilometre away. It could start right at your fence line. So how do you stop it? And that's what a drone of my size, so again, the Mavic is about this big when it's flying. And that was around 200 feet high and about 200 meters from me to the drone itself. So very, very difficult to spot visually, as well as with all of those advanced techniques. What sort of drones are available? Well, there's a whole bunch. We've talked about commercial off the shelf. That on the top left there, that's the Mavic with an iPhone attached to its controller. And from there, you can stream anything you like to the internet. The one on the right is a self-build. That's a military capability. And then the one on the bottom left was used by hostile forces in northern Syria. And it's just a repurposed radio control aircraft with some basic autopilot functions and can carry a payload. So it might include any or all of those things, which presents another difficulty for us, because the way you might approach trying to stop a commercial drone is not the way you would try and approach stopping one of those. You may not have a data link, for example. And here's another good reason why we're interested in stopping these things. This was a guy, again, you can find this on the internet. It doesn't take a great deal of research. He bought all of those parts off from hobbyist shops and so on, online stores, and he built, using a 3D printer, a frame downloading a set of plans he already had. This is a means of getting up close to deliver a cyber effect into someone's Wi-Fi. It's got Wi-Fi antennas on board and basic pineapple nano capability, and it will either perch and drop a payload, or it will just sit there for a little while, hoover up whatever it can from your Wi-Fi and then depart out again. If you're on the 14th floor of a tower block, altitude is no longer a defense from these things. The basic architecture of a drone, and the reason I'm showing you this is because a lot of people think, oh, it's just IT, don't worry, we can put IT security controls in it. The nearer you get to the internet, the more it looks like IT. So the more it appears like a pad, a tablet, a laptop. You have a controller in the middle, which is primarily, tends to be bespoke proprietary design of some sort. And then the nearer you get to the actual airborne piece of the architecture, its size, weight, and power is very important. It's very bespoke. They'll run a microkernel OS. It will be very, very closely defined and built for purpose, rather than being repurposed IT like on the left-hand side. The nearer you get to the internet, the more you'll have standardized interfaces and protocols, and you might have RJ45 connectors and those sort of things to go into. In the aircraft, depending on whether it's commercial or not, you might or might not have micro SD connections. You might have storage cards and devices like that on board. Those may be there, they may not, depending on the type of vehicle that's involved. So more like operational technology this way, deliberately so. And then if we were to take are there any enterprise architects in the room? Good, okay, I can get away lightly with that then. So just as a generic system view, the air segment is here, and here are the sort of basic chunks of things that might be involved in an air vehicle. So you have an autopilot, you've got a data link, you've got a navigation system of some sort, a controller, you've got the sensors, including the GPS. And it talks to the ground segment, i.e. the controller, via a data link. And it could be Wi-Fi, it could be RF, it could be some of the more proprietary means. And then you've got a CIS segment, so that would be your laptop or your mobile phone or your iPad. And each of those has components that may or may not be affectable. And again, into the cyber world, where might those vulnerabilities lie? Well, really, they're in those 5 areas. You might be able to impact the operating system of the IT. You might be able to get to it via its networking device. And then the hardwire across to the interfaces in the ground controller. You may be able to impact the data link, and you might be able to impact the sensors, including the GPS. And particularly the GPS and the data link is where most of the commercially available counter-drone systems are focused, stopping the data link and stopping the receipt of the GPS signals. How? How? It's really hard. The manufacturers protect that bubble from the flight control system up to the air vehicle. That is their IP. You can buy more air vehicles, you can buy differently characterized air vehicles. Those are effectively a commercialized commodity. The flight control system is the real heart of the intellectual property protected by the manufacturers. There are a few points of entry that don't require physical access. If you're going to break it, if it's in your hands, you might as well just break it. So cyber attack on this thing is hard. And the data links are generally quite robust. I talked about DJI's Oculus system. It's pretty good. And it might also have encoding or encryption laid upon it as well. It's very easy to enable an AES encryption standard without being too clever. And the components used in the exposed bits, so the things that might fall out of the sky, the air vehicles, the components tend to be operational technology. So again, micro kernel OSs with functionality focused on size, weight, and power. The other drama, and this is one thing that wasn't really too clear during the whole Gatwick issue, is these are counted as aircraft. If it's above 250 grams, it's an aircraft. And therefore, interfering with the safety of an aircraft is illegal under the Air Navigation Order, which presents a real problem. And that is as true for the police as it is for civilians. And also jamming is illegal under the Wireless Telegraphy Act. So without the permissions in place, stopping them is really difficult. And you might only be able to observe and track rather than stop the thing itself. However, if you're going after detection and early detection and perhaps defeat, then this is the sort of system you can buy. I don't actually know which one this is, but I'm not tied to any particular vendor, so frankly, this could be any. And they all tend to work a similar way. You'll have some sort of radar capability. You'll have integrated acoustic sensors. You might have some optical sensing or thermal imaging. You will have a jamming capability. Again, that's largely focused on stop the data link and stop the GPS, if you're allowed to use it. And there'll be a whole bunch of, is it portable, is it mobile in some description, or is it mounted on a building and so on. What these manufacturers generally don't tell you is the extreme limited range at which these things work. So around here, for example, picking up a drone that's operating 100 meters away would be nearly impossible. Radar difficult, RF sensing very difficult, acoustic, you probably never hear it over the background noise in London, just very, very difficult to do. So this is very expensive and the capability is quite limited. So our friends in the media love to talk about that one on the top left, so the Dutch experiment with eagles. Our colleagues in the Dutch MOD tell me that they've now stopped this because it didn't work. Very hard to train. The eagles didn't like it. The animal rights protesters quite rightly complained that the eagles' claws were getting, their talons and their legs were getting chopped up by the rotors. And there was one instance of another trial that was being run in France where an eagle attacked a young child because the child was wearing the same colour top as the colour of the drone it was trained to stop. Must have been a white shirt, I guess. So those have generally stopped, although it makes a great shot for showing it on BBC News. Likewise, the next one, that's a drone gun. It's either CO2 powered or it's got some explosive canister in it, and it fires effectively a shell that contains a net that then disperses and snags the drone. What you won't get from any of the manufacturers is any kind of effective range because they work only at very low level. Chasing a drone with another drone with a net underneath, that's really hard. I've done that, it's difficult. And various manufacturers will claim autonomy and so on. You'll see a radar gun, or effectively a jamming gun, that's on the bottom left. Our police force colleagues don't like anything that looks like a gun being used in any kind of area where there's lots of people. So can you imagine Wembley Stadium, drone flies overhead, someone starts pointing something that looks like a gun, panic ensues. Not great. The next one is a more sort of fixed installation jammer. That's being manufactured by Rheinmetall. That's a high-power laser. I think the two lasers in there are 6 megawatts, and it takes about 10 seconds to zap a drone out of the sky with 12 megawatts of laser power. So again, not easy. And then if you really don't care about Crawley, then you can use guns. Probably not. So before I get into this, why am I here? I'm here as part of the QA team. I provide, and my company provides, training in countering drones, and we don't only look at drones, we look at countering this kind of threat in a variety of environments, but drone is the current thing that we're paying a lot of attention to. It's hard, and a lot of people focus on the technology. We like to look at the whole of the capability and what your response options might be, and where your sensitive elements might be within your site. And if you've got a massive fixed installation such as Heathrow, how many of those detection systems do you need spread around the perimeter to try and make this work? How does it integrate with your current command and control? How does it talk to security? Do security and operations work together? Who has control and who has the decision? And it's understanding that whole concept of operations, which is not the same as ground-based physical security. And what we saw with Gatwick is that clearly operations and security hadn't integrated as well as they might, and they certainly hadn't trained and rehearsed for this kind of issue. So that's why we're here, because we provide a training solution with our partners QA, and at lunchtime, I'll be upstairs on the QA stand if anybody wants to talk further. So this is what I'm really interested in is the challenges. So how do we, as a group, close the gap between how much a drone costs and how capable that is, and how much it costs to be able to stop one? How can we make it as disruptive as possible in detection and defeat? I don't think the traditional sense of we'll repurpose military capability is actually going to work for us as well as it might. So, because it's expensive. You don't need capability that can work down to minus 45 degrees in the Arctic Circle with the Royal Marines, for example, not if you're at Gatwick. So, some of those things don't apply. But how do we get into the disruption of fast pace and do things differently rather than traditional procurement? And how do we get over that IP situation? Well, I talked about the bubble that exists around the flight control of the data link and the air vehicle. How do we help them protect their interests, but at the same time be able to say, actually, we want to stop that? And help us, so everybody here can help this. So increase awareness. So we talked about eagles and nets, and everybody says, get an eagle, get a net, get an army sniper. We've talked why those things are not appropriate or not capable. The other question is, if you've got a guy with a drone gun, one of the net-based jobs, if it can only fire out to 100 meters and you've only got 4 of them at Heathrow, how long will it take to get the gun to where the drone is? Longer than the drone will stay airborne, probably. But we need to be training people. We need to be increasing awareness and education and training key staff. So people that are buying equipment, people that are running operations and responsible and accountable managers at these installations. Technical aspects, technical people, we need to be able to talk about this subject much more widely with people who really understand data links and electronic warfare and commercialized IT. We definitely need to start educating security people, because what we don't want is someone looking at the red light on top of a crane and saying that's a drone. And we think that happened at Gatwick. And clearly, maybe, that's an opinion. However, that was reported in the news. And obviously the IT people, we need to be sure that what sort of data can flow over these networks, all the usual stuff that cybersecurity professionals are looking at in terms of intruder detection systems and what is unusual on our network. Well, maybe this is unusual, so let's look at this. And we need to regain some ground. The drones are way ahead, and you've seen that I spent most of my career from 2004 onwards working with drones. Drones are way ahead. Counter drones lagging really, really badly. So we need to try and level up this arms race, and I think cybersecurity professionals are part of that fight, and you can really help me with that. So I am just about bang on time. I think we may have opportunity for 1 or 2 questions, but that's me. That's our partner company, Psyker. That's my company, Level 7, and clearly, as I said, we're partnered in this event with QA, and our training courses are available on the QA website for anybody that wishes to take that up.